For family offices, increasing allocations to alternatives also comes with more tedious tasks required to manage portfolios. Are these manual operational workflows slowing you down? This episode of the AYU Family Office podcast is brought to you by Canoe Intelligence. Born within a family office, Canoe uses AI and machine learning to automate manual workflows and transform how you manage your alternative investment data. Automate your document collection and data extraction process to turn tedious tasks into your strategic advantage, delivering precise outcomes and actionable insights to manage your alts smarter with Canoe. Over 200 family offices utilize Canoe to help improve efficiencies, scale their alts, portfolios, and future-proof the family office. Find out how in the podcast description or visit canoeintelligence.com/AYU.
Hello and welcome back to the Family Office podcast. I am flying solo this week without my collaborator and co-host, Lucy Sermon. She's off traveling, hosting events around the world, which is always good to hear. This week, I was talking to Harrison Lance, another very good friend and collaborator across the pond. Harrison's based in Atlanta, an American working for the UK government. He works for the UK Department of Business and Trade, focused on family offices and family office investment into the UK from the US direction, basically. Harrison and I have been working together quite closely as AU and the UK government come together a bit more over the past 6 months, 12 months or so, and it's been a really, really fruitful and exciting angle to be working on. We're actually putting together a summit for the UK government and US family offices in Atlanta later this year. That's September 2025, which is, well, you won't see it anywhere. It's basically the only place you'll hear about it. It's a very, very private, invitation only family office summit, which Harris and I talk about a bit here and talk about what the UK government is doing for and with family offices. And as ever, a really interesting discussion with a great guest. Enjoy. Harrison, welcome to the AU Family Office podcast. It's great to have you on. I've been trying to get you on for a couple of months now, and it's good to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing well. Anything for king and country, and one of the things that just keeps me busy is DBT. So I apologize for the delay, but I'm happy to be here now.
Okay, so the first time I met you, we met late last year, and one of the bits that threw me instantly was American working for king and country. So talk me through this. Tell me how you got here, and then maybe a bit more about DBT in a second.
Sure, absolutely. So I got here in a very windy road, as a lot of people in the network do, actually. It's a wonderful network full of career civil servants, but also of subject matter experts and a lot of people with a ton of connections within their local areas, which is a really, really interesting way that DBT and the UK government as a whole is working. Which is, if you're going to inspire investment into the UK, you got to have personal relationships with these stakeholders, right? You got to have these personal relationships with everyone from the C-suite all the way down to the field staff to the people who are actually working the day-to-day jobs. So I got here through an entrepreneurial background. Eventually worked built several companies, exited them, and was able to find my way to a DBT because of my ability to speak with financial services people, private equity people, insurance people, everything down the whole gambit. And they said, we want someone who's able to go and present the value that the UK shows and the UK has, and be able to hold their own in the boardroom. And so that's how I found my way here. My title is long, as all civil servants' titles are. But I am the Senior Trade and Investment Officer for the Southeastern United States for the UK Department for Business and Trade. I'm also the National Lead for Asset Management and Family Office Strategy, which is why we are talking.
So how many of you are there in the States, and how big is the UK DBT, Department of Business and Trade, internationally?
That's a great question. It's quite a large network. So it's the North American network. So we cover everything from the United States to Canada to Mexico, and the Caribbean at large. So it's quite a large network, and it's subdivided into different sectors. So I am in the financial services and professional services category. There's also life sciences, there's tech, there's advanced manufacturing, there's space and air defense. So there's a lot of different sectors that cover, I think, across the 9 consulates that are in North America. And one of the things that's really interesting about the usage of these consulates and the usage of the DBT staff is to not just present a great face and showcase the special relationship between the UK and the US, but also to, as I said, inspire investment into the UK, and also to help UK companies that are coming out of the UK and going into North America. Because at the end of the day, there are cultural differences, and a company being able to understand that and being able to understand how to navigate that is a huge part of this. And then also understanding who are the key stakeholders for me to make sure that I have a successful launch into the UK or into the US. Right? There's a lot of focus on trade associations. There's a lot of focus on networking groups. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that trusted person to kind of pull you aside and say, hey, I want you to meet with this person, or hey, I want you to join this trade association, or hey, I think that you would be you'd be benefited in a large way if you did this, had this market entry plan, had this strategy. Those kind of things that just really come from having a really unique understanding, not just of the landscape here, but also of government infrastructure, of trade associations, and just kind of general knowledge, especially in the UK and the US. That's where we kind of sit, and that's how we do it. Now, I'm in a unique position because I also deal with family offices, and family offices don't like to be introduced to anybody. They kind of are their own separate asset class, where they, as you know, like to network with themselves. They only in family offices like to network with family offices, and unfortunately, there's a lot of fakers out there. As you know, DBT has been a huge fan of AYU's APO program, the Approved Family Office. I'm sorry, AFO, not APO, AFO. And I think the ability to kind of have a framework to establish, hey, yes, this is actually somebody worth meeting, not even worth meeting, but this is someone who's not claiming somebody that they're not. That's a huge part of that. So we're in a unique position where we are trying to talk to family offices to inspire investment both into the UK, but also UK family offices and inspire investment into the US to further strengthen that special relationship.
And how is the UK government and I guess specifically DBT related to family offices in the past? Is this a new thing that's coming online as family offices have come more to the fore and become more sophisticated, or has this always been there?
No, that's a really good question. So, I've been focused on family offices for quite some time. I will say that the approach to go and actually integrate with family offices and to ingratiate ourselves to family offices, that's a new approach. That's something that hasn't happened before. And a large part of that is because there's been this understanding, especially from my team and in government as a whole, that family offices are kind of where private equity was back in 2004, right? Private equity in 2004 was more of a scalpel. They were able to make quick decisions. They were able to invest outside of the kind of regulations and the due diligence that banks normally do and did. And so now private equity has grown into this, 800-pound gorilla in the room. Banks have kind of been regulated to just accepting people's deposits and making traditional loans, but they're not doing investments in the same way that they were. Now that's private equity, right? So private equity is this 800-pound gorilla. They're no longer the scalpel. They're the sledgehammer. Family offices are right where they were in 2004, right? They're kind of the scalpel. They're able to make quick moves. They have a longer time horizon on their investment structures. They're much more culturally in tune with what government wants and what the U.S. wants, and in terms of just being able to understand that, hey, maybe the ROI isn't going to be there for the first 3 years, but for the next 15, it's absolutely going to be there, and that would never stand up to an investment committee, right? If it was like, oh, you're not going to be profitable in 3 years, well, we plan on being exited in 7. So that means 4 years of profitability. No, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. That's a traditional private equity structure. Family offices, they're looking at an opportunity to invest for 15, 20, 25 years. And that's much more in line with what we're seeing both out of government, but also out of kind of culturally what an investment should look like. So that's really, really supportive. and the ability for DBT to kind of get in there now when again, they're at where they were in 2004. The projection is that they're going to just continue to rise in terms of influence. And we'd like to be able to kind of showcase the strength of the UK as an investable destination, but also, hey, we'd like to be your partner in this. You tell us, we want to hear from industry. What do you need to see in order to have more deals done, to invest more capital, to grow more businesses? That's what we want at the end of the day.
So, as I said, we connected late last year, met in Miami, did the family office conferences. You chaired one of our panels very professionally and very charismatically. Thank you very much for that. We're going to have you back on those things. Where do you see us helping you as a group? We're obviously very interested in making these connections and also as a Brit, standing behind Britain and wanting to fly the flag and be proud internationally. Where's the pinch point that we can help you guys?
So I think AYU is extremely unique. You have a lot of family office centered membership organizations, especially in the United States, simply because when you see 3,000, and 3,000 is a lot, but 3,000 in the scope of the United States is not a lot, right? There's 375 million people here, and you've got 3,000 family offices, and that's being generous, right? That's with a generous definition of what a family office is. UK has about 500 to 700, so it's a lot more of a tighter pool, of course. But one of the things that I think is so interesting about AYU compared to other family office membership organizations is your unique ability to bring both GPs into the conversation, trusted GPs, because that's one thing that family offices hate, is to constantly be pitched. And you have a really great network of GPs that you trust, GPs that have done business with family offices before, and GPs that kind of think outside the box. That's a huge part. But also being a platform where you actually engage with government. You are not scared. You're not that you're not scared of government, obviously, but it's that, government can be seen as a valuable partner and an ally in what these family offices want, and being able to have a convening space, a neutral space for them to have that kind of conversation. That's a huge, huge plus. And then on top of all that, you have the approved family office program. I mean, I don't see anybody doing that. And that's because, especially when it comes to a membership-based organization, that's the lifeblood, right? The more members we can bring in, the more powerful, the more influential. And AYU's taking the opposite approach, which is not, we don't want people, but we want the right people. And we want to make sure that, everybody, we want to do right by our current members, but also if you have something to offer, please, yes, come. But you're going to have to be subjected to some checks, because at the end of the day, that's what's required in order to make things move, to make things happen. If I'm talking to 1,000 people, but I can talk to 2, and those 2 can make something happen, I'd rather not talk and waste the time with 998.
Yeah, you can waste so much time just having conversation, not getting anywhere in this space. So, yeah, that's what we're aiming at. Good. Hopefully, we can help more and more. The next question I got is kind of the elephant in the room one, which is that since this new government has come in, there has been a reasonable amount of wealth, or a reasonable amount of headlines grabbing attention about wealth leaving the UK. Now, that's it's the big punchy stuff, and it's the painful tax stuff, and it's those stories. But there is positive stuff there as well, and there is encouraging moves being made with national investment funds. Can you talk me through some of the big highlights that you can see? Like, look, this is actually good news.
Well, and I will say it's never good news when wealth is leaving. But one of the things that it's great to see out of this government is the response to that, which is, okay, that's a problem. Let's see what we can do to fix it. And a large part of that transition out of wealth, away from the UK was largely because of a decades-old problem of the lack of VC infrastructure. If you look at VC infrastructure alone, US versus UK, you're talking David versus Goliath, with the UK being Goliath. I'm sorry, with the UK being David. Because it's just not. You've got a factor of 110-fold of more VC capital in the U.S. than you do in the U.K. And so there's an age-old idea that, age-old problem where you've got a great idea coming out of Oxford, Cambridge, Manchester, London, right? You've got a phenomenal idea. You've got a great product. You've built the minimum viable product, but there's just not capital to grow. And so you take that minimal viable product, you move it over to the US where there's VC money, where there's private investors, where there's PE money, and then you grow it there, scale it there, and then you IPO it in the US at a much higher valuation. And that's been a problem largely since the 80s and 90s. The current government has seen that is a huge issue. And if you're going to have wealth created here and also move here, you have to have favorable conditions for VC infrastructure. You have to have favorable conditions for IPOs. You have to have favorable conditions for growth. And that's been the major message from this government is growth. And I think that's something that you're seeing in both continuation of some old policies, the creation of new policies. One of the things that was just announced was a continuation, even I would argue, an expansion of the Mansion House reforms of 2023. So in 2023, there was an announcement that we are going to take a review and reform the UK pension structure, right? We have 8,000 pensions, and the average pension size is $20 million. Let's reorganize those 8,000 pensions into 200 mega pensions, with the average size being about 2 to 10 billion, and then let's mandate that those pensions have to put 10% into private placement, fund to funds, or VC infrastructure as a whole. Right? That's been in the process of going for the past 2 years. Now, as of last week, they just announced that the top 17 mega pensions in the UK are required by 2030. They're mandated to put 10% of their assets into fund to funds, private placement, private deals, and that about 5% of that's going to be 5% of the 10% is going to be ring fenced around the UK. Right? That's huge. That's an incredible amount of investment. That's going to equate to about £50 billion of new investment into the UK. And that means that's newfound opportunity for family offices to co-invest, for more money, for more investment, for more jobs. I think the focus is, let's look, yes, we've had issues, but we are making meaningful actions. We're making meaningful reforms that's going to lead to much more capital being invested in the UK, much more opportunity available in the UK. And with more opportunity comes more investment from family offices, from private equity, from venture capital, from sovereign wealth funds, from the whole 9 yards. A great example of this was the National Wealth Fund, right? The British Business Bank was reorganized into the National Wealth Fund. And the National Wealth Fund just made an investment of 20 some odd million pounds into Sheffield Minerals, alongside a couple of other equity partners, and that's now kind of seen as the gold standard, right? If I'm as government going to put money into a project, well, if I'm a private individual, I want to go where the government's going. Look at the due diligence that they've done. Like, that's much higher than most private organizations have done. So it means for a better return on investment, which everyone in the space is looking for, right? A lot of capital has left the UK in search of better returns because the evaluations in the US are just so much higher. There's been countless investment banks that have gone and grabbed a UK company for 3x of their EBITDA, took it and reshored it to the US, and spent 12 months kind of growing their bottom line incrementally, and then they'll exit because the evaluations are 9x the EBITDA, just because of the different evaluations. That needs to be able to, we as the UK, we need to be able to say, we're going to be competitive in this landscape, and a large portion of that comes from the ability to hand a better ROI to the investors and savers, both of the country but also globally.
Okay, interesting. That's lots of nice messages there. One of the bits that jumps out to me here, and I think we can maybe separate out with the challenges for wealth living in the UK. We're not necessarily talking about domicile right here. We're talking about FDI. We're talking about, well, specifically here, US family offices coming into the UK, but it's investing and seeing potential. It's not necessarily living here, right?
Right. No, that's a really unique distinction. Because there are, great examples of this. There are families that can be created, family offices can be created overnight in the US, right? Overnight. All of a sudden, I have a great new idea. Yeah, I started a SaaS company. 3 years later, I sell it for $1.2 billion. I now have a family office. That story has repeated itself multiple times. Those families want to go to other places and expand their reach. The more apt comparison I'd like to make is the great wealth transfer that's coming, right? We talk about this. You've talked about this a bunch. The great wealth transfer in the next 20 years, by 2045, you're going to have $84.4 trillion change hands. It's going to be inherited by the younger generation, right? That's globally, but that's a ton of money. That's a ton of money. And the question that a lot of the younger generation has to ask themselves are we going to continue in the same kind of investments that our parents made? Are we going to continue in their shadow, or are we going to branch out and tangentially kind of continue our approach, but not completely throw away the generations of infrastructure and the generations of knowledge that our parents and our parents before us had built, right? That's the question. And I think the UK has done a really good job of kind of trailblazing on this issue. I think of the 7th Duke of Westminster as a great example. Hugh Grosvenor, right? His father unfortunately passed away at the age of 64. He's 33, has inherited a 11 billion pound empire. And it's largely based on real estate, right? He owns 80% of Mayfair, owns half of London. It's all been very much real estate focused. So the question he has to ask is, am I going to continue in the real estate world, or specifically in the multifamily residential real estate world, or am I going to jump out and into something that's unique, but also kind of attached to real estate? And I think you're seeing a lot of that happen, both with the Duke of Westminster, but also with various other people who have been the new generation say, you know what, I want to make something myself. I want to invest in something that I'm passionate about, not that my father or my mother was passionate about. And the US loves to copycat the great things of the UK. And I think one of the things that you're going to see over the next 5 years is a lot of US family offices go and establish a presence in the UK so that they can more closely study how the UK is doing this and doing it very effectively, and how they can mimic that exact procedure. And that's inevitably going to lead to more investment into the UK, and potentially even families moving to the UK because of the culture, but 2, the ability for the UK to be seen as a thought leader on this great wealth transfer and how to do it both respectfully but also efficiently. And I think that's a huge, huge plus that the UK just cannot be ignored on compared to the rest of the world.
Do you think now that there's a difference in sophistication between US family offices and UK ones? Maybe some of it is older money, multi-generational, and maybe some of it on your side of the pond is newer wealth. I mean, that's not a binary thing at all. What do you see from your side?
No, I think it's a really good point. And I kind of walked myself into that one with overnight you can have a family office established compared to the UK, which is much more multi-generational, right? That's where you're really establishing a longevity argument for the UK compared to the US. And obviously, to your point, that's not binary. There are plenty of family offices in the US that have multi-generational wealth. I'm thinking the Cox family in Atlanta. I'm thinking the Rothschilds. I'm thinking the Arnolds. There's a lot of. I'm thinking the Crowns. There's a lot of multi-generational wealth, but it just is dwarfed by the new wealth that's been created over the last, let's call it 80 years. And I think what's really interesting is that does change the approach that family offices will take towards investments, right? You do see a lot more riskier, I think, investments coming out of the U.S. That they're willing to get involved into things that exactly haven't been proven out yet, or they're willing to take a stab at something that has failed before, but they think they can change it, which is great. That's a great attitude to take. And I think that's something that the UK family offices can learn from. But on the flip side, the UK has been built by steady conservative investments. I know this is going to work. It's worked before. We're good. I think that the US family offices could learn a lot from that. of there's value in being steady. You don't have to go and find the next Uber to invest in. You don't have to go. Some of the best investments are in critical infrastructure, something that the UK family offices do actually invest a lot in, which is, how can I improve the seaport? How can I improve the airport? How can I improve wait times? And that touches technology, but it also touches actual infrastructure. The U.S. kind of just hasn't gotten there yet, and I think that's also a factor of government approach, right? In the U.S., family offices look at the government as the adversary. They look at government as a problem. They say, I don't want the government to even know I exist. Compare that to the U.K., which they say, I want the government to know I exist. I want the government to be able to, I want to be able to talk to my MP. I want to be able to talk to my minister and say, hey, this is a problem for me. Or, hey, I want to be helpful on this. Tell me how I can be helpful on this. It's just a radically different approach for something of similar culture and a similar language. And I'm talking about the language of money, not just what we speak in terms of English.
Mm-hmm.
It's radically different. And I think that one of the opportunities we're going to see, especially with this with the new trade deal that we just signed, that was just announced. I think that something you're going to see is the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of tactics and the sharing of opportunities between U.S. family offices and U.K. family offices. And I think that's really going to usher in this kind of golden age of family office investment, both in the U.S. and in the U.K.
Yeah, the co-investment is a word I'm now saying 50 times a day, and it's pretty much every conversation we have with family offices is being able to trust other people. And yeah, you have that in your home city and your home country, but internationally, where there's completely different market conditions, if you can go into something where you like the idea of it, but there are different market temperatures. If you've got a partner who's living in that temperature and being able to feed back, that's just huge. I think that's going to be one of the major things that comes across from this next wave as family offices get more and more sophisticated, want to go direct. They don't necessarily want to pay big fees all over the place, or they want to find funds where they can get in because they've got another partner who's already in there. That corporation is just going to get more and more and more, basically.
I think you're raising a great point, because the other part of this and something that I think family office, I call it family office diplomacy, is when you're looking at something like a macro event like the trade deal, right? Which is amazing because it's the first trade deal that the U.S. has announced, right? That is a huge signal to the world that the U.S.-UK special relationship is alive, it's well, and it's going to do nothing but improve from here. And I think one of the things that's directly going to affect is the special relationship that U.S. capital and U.K. capital, specifically through family offices, is going to benefit from. Because as governments go, so do their citizens, so do their people. And I think when you have the wealthiest in the world, which is what comes from the U.K. and the U.S. in terms of family offices, their families, some of the wealthiest families in the world, they're going to want to work together with who their governments want to work together with. And I think, one of the things that the UK is amazing at is maintaining this international presence across the world, right? It kind of represents the epitome of mature Western capital, but it has great relationships with emerging capital, kind of coming from India, from the Gulf states, from Africa as a whole. And as young as U.S. capital is in comparison to kind of world history, U.K. history as a whole, we don't have those opportunities. We don't have those deal flows that come in from those emerging markets, and the U.K. does. And so this special relationship is going to allow the U.S. family offices to put money into the U.K. and co-invest with U.K. family offices into these emerging markets, which kind of brings the two great approaches, right? Let's focus on something innovative, something new, something that could, be the next Uber. But then you have the UK approach of let's go look at what's steady. Well, you know what? The Gulf states, the African capital, the Indian capital, the deal flows out of those. There are many stable deals that can come out of those. And I think that that's going to be a beautiful blend with the UK smack on top as the convener of international deals.
Yeah, the week after that trade deal, we saw firsthand, really, company very, very close to our hearts. They're mid-round, and everything was very slow. And then the Monday afterwards, ding, 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 emails start coming in, checks start coming through. Oh, I've got liquidity. I got this. It was a visceral spike from getting that done. So
Yeah.
lots of positivity to see that. I mean, a rough 6 weeks or so before with Trump, 4 weeks ago before with Trump kind of making it up, and obviously it's not done, but it's was certainly nice to see, and we've seen a lot more. Been busier since.
Yeah.
We've all been
No,
busier
and
since.
I think that's the key here is maintaining that business first kind of aspect, and ensuring that industry is on the mind of both government officials, but also on the mind of negotiators when they're at the table. And one of the things that those 6 weeks were some trying times, of course. My email inbox was blowing up, but one of the things is making sure that calmer heads prevail, that steadiness is focused on, and that the central message of growth. And that doesn't have to be exclusively UK growth. It's obviously the UK should benefit from that growth, but being able to say, hey, we're going to grow our jobs, we're going to grow our investment, and we're going to grow our influence is a huge, huge aspect of what government and industry is focused on.
So we got some stuff that we're collaborating on, as in you're coming in to helping out with some of our events.
Yes.
We'll get to those in a second, but I've got a couple more questions on family offices, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
You're talking about actually interfacing with people and actually having a conversation. How and where should family offices, whether they're UK or US, let's say for here, how should they be reaching out to the UK government? How can they reach out to the UK government?
Yeah. One, absolutely, please feel free to reach out to me and my team. So as I said, I'm the national lead for family office strategy. That includes engagement. It's very easy to reach me. It's my name. It's harrisonlance@businessandtrade.gov.uk. So please do feel, whoever wants to, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a big fan of having just simple conversations and getting to know more family offices. But the other part of this, both US and UK, and I think there's a difference, right? US family offices, I'd encourage them to reach out to DBT first. I don't think that it'd be the best idea to just go call Baroness Gustafson and saying, hey, I'm a family office, talk to me. That's just not how it goes, right? But I think one of the things that's really interesting about the UK, so I think in 2023, we did a dinner for family offices in the palaces of Westminster. And one of the things that was clear was the government wanted to both get a read on industry and what they were focused on, but also wanted to explain to them that what they were focused on, which was largely impact investing, philanthropic investing, that kind of aspect. And that was under, I believe, Lord Johnson was the one who helped push that dinner through. And one of the things that I found so interesting was the willingness of senior levels of government to engage on a individual basis with these family offices. They want to meet family offices. They want to meet with these families because at the end of the day, as I said, they're quick to deploy capital. They are much more in line culturally with what the UK sees as an investment, which is a longer time horizon, right? I'm talking 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Compare that to a private equity firm, which is 5 to 7 years exited. They are, and they're much more focused on being able to, at the end of the day, push the narrative of the UK is open for business and the UK is a convener of capital. They're willing to speak with you. They're willing to reach out. They're willing to meet with you one-on-one. Obviously there's this new joint unit in the UK government called OFI, which is the Office for Investment. It's led by a gentleman by the name of Neil Cosgrove, phenomenal guy, spent 20 years in investment banking. He can speak the language. It's incredible. I feel dumb around him. This guy is really focused on making sure that they can take UK capital and deploy it effectively and make sure that it kind of supports this overarching thing that I've been talking about making the UK accessible, making the UK a convener of capital, both internationally and locally, and nationally, but also that they can pursue a higher ROI than what is normal or normally seen over the past couple of years. One of the things that's so interesting and what led to the Mansion House reforms of 2023 was this idea that the savers need to have a better return. And that's led to this kind of idea of a reform. Government wants to be that connector, that convener for family office capital and say, hey, we've got this great idea. It's got, this great company has a great idea. Look at Sheffield Minerals. They're expanding. We need to support them. Great ROI there. Let's put you in contact. OFI can help do that. It's a joint unit between number 10 Downing Street Treasury and DBT. So being able to kind of reach out to DBT both in country and out of country, because we can put you in connection with the right people, whether that's the Office for Investment, whether that's with for the U.S. families, the greater North American network, and even hey, let's talk about opening an office in London. Let's talk about opening an office in Manchester. Let's talk about opening an office in the UK in general. That's where we can really come in and help.
Okay, fantastic. All right, one final question before we get on to these upcoming events, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
It's often hard to sum up family office investment appetite, but in a few lines, 50 words or less, 150,000 words or less, what are you seeing in America right now, whether it's in the UK or whether it's global?
Ooh, okay. I'm seeing a lot of focus on the great wealth transfer, how to do that effectively. One of the things that I think the world is starting to learn, because the UK kind of has taken this from the beginning, was the aspect of kind of, I have no other word for it except for primogeniture on the transfer of control of a family's estate and a family's process and a family office, right? Are we going to give it to one person? Or are we going to give each heir a split, an equitable split, and then they have to come to a unanimous or a super majority or even just a majority decision on whether or not they're going to do an investment? The U.S. is dealing with that right now because the vast majority of family offices in the U.S. are 50 years old. They're not the vast majority, right? There's obviously those outliers that have kind of gone through 3, 4, 5 generations. But a lot of the new wealth is focused on that problem right now because they've never had to deal with that issue at large. The UK has. And so that's one, I think they can learn a lot from that. So I see a lot of focus on the great wealth transfer. I see a lot of focus on are we as the younger generation going to continue in our parents' footsteps, or are we going to kind of branch off and do our own little path that's tangential, right? We don't want to completely 180 and do something else, but are we able to branch off and kind of create our own niche investment world? I'm seeing a lot of that conversation. And then kind of in the UK, I'm seeing a lot of focus on maintaining both a steady growth, maintaining their presence. To your point of capital leaving, there's a lot of capital staying here, but they want to make sure that that's the right decision. And I think a lot of the government's moves are showcasing that it is the right decision. That just, hey, we've got the short, medium, and long-term plan. Just trust us. And a lot of family offices are, which is great. And then I'm also seeing a really big focus on interconnectedness and co-investment. One of the things that a lot of people in the West are saying is, it's the death of globalism, or if it's there's not this kind of world economy anymore. I don't think that's accurate. I think a lot of family offices are saying that's actually the complete opposite. And they're almost acting in a way that is counter to a lot of things, counter to a lot of geopolitical volatility, in the sense of they crave that connection, whether that's networking with other family offices like AYU provides, or whether that's, hey, I've got a buddy over in Germany and I want to call him up and see what we've got. They're actively courting co-investment and networking with other family offices. And you really didn't see that before, right? A lot of the times you had the Rothschilds would network with the Rothschilds. The Arnolds would network with the Arnolds. There was no intra-family connection. No one really, they would just kind of stick to themselves. And that's no longer the case. And that, I think there's a greater argument. I am not a psychiatrist or anything like that, but I think that can lead to that stems from a lot of the loneliness that a lot of people can feel both in finance but also in deal making, and they crave that connection, that human connection, but that comes with a capital connection, and I think that is what you're seeing globally, right? That's something you're seeing from South America. That's something you're seeing from Africa. That's something you're seeing from the Gulf states and India. And I think the only one that we're not seeing that from is really the Chinese family offices, but that's neither here nor there. That's largely government based as well. So I think that ability to bridge that gap, to do those cross boundaries as cross border transactions and kind of network effectively, I think that's something that you're going to see consistently rise over the next decade.
Interesting stuff. Okay, let's wrap this up with a bit of info. Give us a deep dive on the Atlanta event in September.
Yeah.
DBT, headed up, family office. We're going to talk about it now, but it's going to be hard to get into, right? It's going to be selective. We have a big committee of saying yes a bit and saying no a lot. Tell me where it's come from. Tell me what the goal is. Tell me who's going to be there.
Well, first and foremost, let me thank you. For everybody who does not know, Gus is one of our members of the Family Office Steering Committee for the UK Department for Business and Trade. And he has done a phenomenal job of kind of helping plug in and using his expertise and his network. So it's been a phenomenal pleasure to see him go to work. The Family Office Summit has been something we've worked on for about 18 months, kind of convening 100 of the top families, both in the U.S. and the U.K., so North American and U.K., and putting them all in a room in Atlanta, Georgia, which is actually a growing place of family offices and family wealth, and making sure that we can convene them all and then present the investability of the UK, and kind of showcase what makes the UK innovative, what makes it great for family offices, what makes it international, just what makes it worth your time and what makes it worth your effort. So we're limiting it to 100 family offices. We are only asking for CIOs and principals. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that's unique, because there's family office event pretty much every month, whether it's some organization, some group, some investment bank, whatever. What makes us unique is that we are asking only for CIOs. We're asking only for principals. This is invite only. And we are having senior levels of the UK government represented. And one of the things, and industry leaders, thought leaders, the whole nine yards is huge. Seeing the buy-in from senior levels of the UK government is huge. Seeing the buy-in from industry is huge. It just showcased that we kind of hit the nail on the head. We've found a problem that we didn't know existed, which was a lack of information on the UK as a destination for this international money, and for family money, but also the desire to connect, the desire to network, and whether that's for co-investment of projects, or whether that's just because you want to have people in your same circle, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we've learned from a very early age is likes like. And if you're a hardworking family and you're like, hey, look, we've made a lot of money, but we worked hard in pest control, just as an example. We'd love to go and meet a hardworking family in real estate. We'd love to go meet a hardworking family in finance. It's one of those things where you've got an ability to kind of build your friendship group, and you don't have to just rely on families, which is what we're seeing a lot of. A lot of these families just have their families. So the summit is going to be great. It's going to be an opportunity to learn about the UK, learn what's coming out of the UK. I think one of the topics that we're potentially discussing is going to be how to buy a sports team. That's awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I think that's going to be really fun. And that's the whole part of this, is taking what is normally a boring, and you do this very well, what is normally a boring topic of conversation, which is family offices or investment as a whole or international capital, and making it fun, making it interesting. Because at the end of the day, I could talk about, spreadsheets and capital stacks and everything else, but that's not fun. That's not fun at all. So let's talk about how, government can help facilitate, government can help in any way it can. Let's talk about how, family, interfamily co-investment, intra-family co-investment. Let's talk about the fun stuff. Let's talk about what makes life worth living if you're one of these families, which is, I want to continue to experience success, but I want to build a community while doing it. And that's what this summit's going to be all about.
I think one of the things that I'm actually really excited about, and I guess this goes across DBT, not just this event, is that I personally haven't had a lot of that interface with governments and powers that be at all. I've just kind of, voted and let the chips fall where they may. But you can, if you've actually got being shown, a door is being open for you to actually have a conversation, it kind of feels like you got more say in what's going on. And as I said earlier, how do people reach out and speak with governments and realize that there's a two-way conversation? This is going to be a really good, and probably a first time for lots of people doing it, really good opportunity to do that, isn't it?
You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's one thing to go and have an official meeting at Whitehall or anything else like that, right? It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to have a senior level of the UK government open a door for you and say, hey, let's make this happen. And one of the things when you and I first met, something that I thought was really, really cool was we quickly got over the titles, and we just started talking as two men, right? And said, hey, let's talk about how we can make something happen. Let's talk about how we can influence change, how we can affect change, how we can visualize and see the future and make that happen. And when you're having that kind of conversation, you need two things. You need capital and you need influence. And that's the two things that you've got in this room. That's the two things that you've got with your organization. That's the two things that you need to change the world, which is capital and influence. And I think marrying those two together and in the pursuit of the government's message of growth for the UK, growth for our financial sector, growth for our future, I think that you can't find a better message and you can't find a better room to be in than the Family Office Summit in Atlanta, with the exception, obviously, of AYU's Family Office Summit.
Look at that segue, so professional. Hey, with that said, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you on the podcast, and I look forward to working further with you, DBT, UK government, and all our friends in the US as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. See you soon, sir. Bye.
Thanks.
Harrison Lance, ladies and gentlemen, what a man, full of life and intelligence when it comes to the family office world, and a really, really key collaborator of AU. Harrison, thank you very much. We look forward to you chairing, hosting, and building stuff again with us in the future. Thank you very much.
For family offices, increasing allocations to alternatives also comes with more tedious tasks required to manage portfolios. Are these manual operational workflows slowing you down? This episode of the AYU Family Office podcast is brought to you by Canoe Intelligence. Born within a family office, Canoe uses AI and machine learning to automate manual workflows and transform how you manage your alternative investment data. Automate your document collection and data extraction process to turn tedious tasks into your strategic advantage, delivering precise outcomes and actionable insights to manage your alts smarter with Canoe. Over 200 family offices utilize Canoe to help improve efficiencies, scale their alts, portfolios, and future-proof the family office. Find out how in the podcast description or visit canoeintelligence.com/AYU.